Hello, my name is Dominic Underhall-House and welcome to another episode of Moonbreaker. In today's episode we're going to be looking at the third in our series of beginner guides to the different captains. So what we've got here is our beginner Astra list. So we've done Zax, we've done Extilior, and we're going to do something slightly different for Astra because Astra plays a little bit differently as well. So in all of the other ones we've been looking at a unit to play on turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going through an AI game and going through a PvP game, and just showing you how that works in practice. So in an Astra list we're actually looking at doing something slightly different, and what we're going to look at doing is we're going to make sure that we use Astra's Grow Cinder ability as our turn 1 play every time. So what that means, Astra's Cinder Spheres are not as clear as it gets. So to start with, Astra's abilities in general, she's got one ranged attack, she's airborne, which means she can jump over other units and over terrain, which is very useful for a bit of mobility, and whenever she destroys a crew, so not a captain, specifically a crew, not a mine or anything like that, but whenever she destroys a crew, refresh her move, it means you just get to move a second time. So the Grow Cinder ability, it creates a Cinder Sphere and you get a maximum of 3 of them. But what it doesn't mention in this description here, it mentions it on the Cinder Sphere in game, is that the Cinder Spheres actually grow every turn. So you spend 1 Cinder to make a Cinder Orb. If you collect it that turn or you place it directly on one of your models, you'll get it back immediately. The next turn, if you've left it for a turn and you can protect it from your opponent, they can shoot it, they can move into it and steal the Cinder themselves, but if you have managed to protect it, it gives you 2 Cinder, and then the following turn it goes to 3 Cinder. So it does bank up turn after turn. It's quite hard to protect them, so we're building this list with relying on having 1 Cinder Sphere that we can protect, and even then only on turn 1, and we have got contingencies in case that doesn't happen. The other part of Astra's ability is Into the Breach. Now that is the next crew you deploy this turn touching Astra gains charge. So charge just means you can act straight away, and even though we're going to be playing this list curving out from, throughout the sort of the curve there, our 3-drop is in this list because Toxoid is very good with Into the Breach, and I'll go through that in just a moment. So what we're going to be looking at doing is playing a Cinder Orb turn 1. On turn 2 we're going to be having access to 4 Cinder. So for argument's sake in this, we're not going to worry too much about Second Wind. We are going to have access to it. I actually built this list before Second Wind became part of the game, so we're not going to worry too much about Second Wind, but it is something you do need to take into account, and when you're building more advanced lists you do want to build for that and keep that in mind. So what we're going to be looking at doing is turn 1 placing a Cinder Orb, turn 2 we're going to play 2 2-drops. So here we've got Rickety Backfire and also Taria. Now if we happen to be going second, we could even potentially use Into the Breach. So that's one of the things that's nice about going second with Astra. We can potentially use Into the Breach periodically to just get that utility out of our units. So that'll be the only thing that we're going to use Second Wind for in these games. So these units here, Taria is a 1 damage, 5 health unit for 2 Cinder, and for 2 Cinder can give a ranged unit rapid fire for the turn. So there's a lot of synergy with that in general, but here it's just a fairly straightforward unit. Rickety Backfire is our other 2-drop, so this is also airborne, so it can move over different bits of terrain and other units, and when it attacks has a 70% chance to also damage itself and all units in range. It's a very short range around itself, but so it's almost melee range, slightly larger than that, and it does the same amount of damage as its current attack, so 3 attack, 3 damage, meaning Rickety can deal up to 6 damage on its own. Very powerful with Into the Breach to be able to charge and do that straight away. Also very powerful with Taria's ability to give it rapid fire, and then not only does it attack twice for a total of 6, it can potentially explode twice. So a very good bit of synergy there as well. Toxoid is one of the ones we mentioned a minute ago, so this is our regular 3-drop. Another airborne unit. Now we're not picking these just because we want an airborne theme list. It's not really how I tend to build things for trying to learn, but it's just another useful ability. And Poison. So what Poison does is when you damage a unit, and you do have to deal damage, it reduces that unit's health to 1. So if you hit something with armor, you won't do anything unless you get a crit, because your 1 damage is cancelled out by the armor, it won't take any damage. But what you can do is if you hit something with that, take it to 1, you move Astra, hit it for 1 damage, and then she gets to refresh her move again, and it's another nice way of getting extra value out of your units. Our last 4-drop here, so we do have a couple of choices. Broken Vengeance is the one we're going to choose to play most of the time. The reason for that is range damage is very useful, and it's just a very solid method from there. And then our 5-drop, so a turn 5 play, is going to be Florio Lancer. So Florio deals bombard damage, requires a lot of cinder, but we have the option of potentially generating extra cinder anyway. Our final units in this list, we've got 2 more 4-drops, one of which is Tipu. So whenever Tipu hits, it permanently gains +1 attack and health, and the thing with this is giving it charge, again using Into the Breach from Astra, very useful, and helps us just start ticking Tipu's ability, or ticking the stats up as early as possible, and can, you know, end up being quite a monster to deal with. And then we've got Switchback as a really solid endgame unit. So Switchback dealing 3 damage on their own, potentially up to 6 damage if we give it rapid fire, very useful ability. Lastly, we've got Necahual. So the reason we like Necahual, return ally to bridge and fully restore it, is because then we can actually use Into the Breach again if we need to give it a charge and attack again. But for the first few games, we're going to be using a Cinder Orb turn 1, we're going to play Taria and Rickety turn 2, Toxoid turn 3, Broken Vengeance turn 4, and Florio turn 5, and then from then on we can decide what we do from there. So, first things I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a versus AI game with this list. You can see it's right down the bottom of all my lists. It's one of the ones I made a little while ago when I was preparing for these videos. I've delayed it a little while because there's been a lot of changes coming to the game. There's been the festive break, so it's now time to get back to this, especially making sure we've got it done before the next new captain comes through. So we're going to jump into an AI game and we're going to talk this through and just explain some of the theories, some of the logic behind our decisions. As a captain, Astra's got a little bit of variety to it, so sometimes you can play quite aggressively with it Into the Breach and moving forwards, other times you can play quite defensively and use a lot of the additional cinder and that sort of thing to play bigger units quicker. Now, looking at this, we've got some good assists here. So Medical Recall is good with Astra specifically because you can then Into the Breach something again and attack again, especially good with something like Tipu. You can keep growing and that sort of thing. Escape Hatch has gone down a lot in the estimation, so our biggest thing here is going to be a Switchback, and Switchback is going to lose 6 health because that's equal to its cost when it comes down. That's not going to be something we're going to want to play in this list. So here are our 2 real options. Vortex is still good, it just pulls units together. It's a bit smaller than it used to be, but it's still a very useful ability. Ion Storm gives it a little bit of longevity, so lose a 40% accuracy for a turn, but it's not guaranteed. Disruptor now moves essentially further than Vortex because the area of units it affects has stayed the same. Has shrunk rather, but the distance it pushes has stayed the same. So Disruptor's very powerful, and Lifeline is just solid. It's not something that's particularly great all the time, but it's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to take Disruptor and Lifeline here. I think this is the most varied option. We can be aggressive with Disruptor, we can be defensive with it as well, we can also be defensive with Lifeline. We've got a good section of options here, and we're just going to take this and start the game from here. So our opponent's going first, so I imagine they're just going to move towards us, and given that they probably use the beginner list of the AI, I imagine this is probably a Maximus that they just deployed turn 1. Okay, they didn't deploy anything. That's good for us. So we're just going to deploy a Cinder back here, keep it nice and safe, and we want somewhere that we can move to and be safe as well. So I don't think they're going to be able to move forward enough to deploy over here, but we're just going to deploy it as far back as we can just to be safe, and we'll even just move over here to block it a little bit just in case we need to. So next time we're actually going to have 6 Cinder instead of 4, because so this is one of the things I like to do with Astra, is I plan for having 4 Cinder on turn 2 every game, because even if our opponent going first has got the sort of they've got the sort of that priority on the battlefield, they can kill our Cinder Orb, we still get the 2 from second wind. So our plan here is still going to be to play Taria and Rickety Backfire, but what we don't want to do is miss out on the additional Cinder. So we're going to bring this in here. We're going to play both Rickety, which is going to go into this just to keep it protected, and Taria back here. Now because this charges every 2 turns, you want to make sure you use it as often as possible. So I'm going to use it straight away. I mean, there's nothing else I need to do here. We could grow another Cinder, and now normally I would do in this situation because they've got melee units, but I'm not going to just for the sake of this, the style of list that we're playing, because we've got plans for the Cinder next turn. So here we're just going to end the turn. Next turn we could either use the rapid fire ability here to give rapid fire to Rickety Backfire and potentially deal a lot of damage, which I think is most likely what we're going to do, or we could use it to give our Toxoid haste, that sort of thing. So here it's absolutely what we're going to do. But what we're going to do is, because we've got Disruptor here and we're not quite in range, there's two different ways we could try and do this. We could try and disrupt these units closer to us, or we can try and disrupt Rickety closer to them and then move. Personally, if I've got the option it looks safe, I'm always going to move after using the abilities, because it just gives me a little bit more control over everything. So this should still be in range of Taria. Taria's going to seize initiative here. The interesting thing as well is, if we don't actually explode, then what we can do is, if we don't explode twice, we can actually lifeline back up. But what we're going to do here, given that basically each of these things is going to do 2 damage to whatever it hits, so even through all of this, Beatrice isn't going to take enough to actually die unless we hit all 4 abilities, which isn't necessarily the case. So we're just going to use this opportunity to rush the captain down and try and deal some sort of additional damage to Beatrice for good luck. So hopefully we want to explode as often as possible here. We don't mind if Rickety dies. Got another attack through. Got a crit as well. So we actually just dealt 13 damage to the enemy captain, which I'm sure you're well aware is absolutely absurd. So we're going to move in this direction just to push the damage in. Let's see if we've got any lines of sight over here with Astra. We don't. So I am going to move over here. We want to be out of range of Beatrice's movement, so as long as we stay back here, push another damage in, and we're going to play our Toxoid again somewhere safe, remembering Toxoid has got airborne, so it can fly over the top of things here. So Taria is going to be in range of Exterior to come over here, but we've now got a lot of pressure here, and given that we've got second wind next turn, we can see the other use of it into playing our Broken Vengeance next turn. So here if they choose to do their abilities, yep, they're just going to kill our Taria. They didn't actually need to use Corrosive there, but that's just the way the AI is. Okay, this is all fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use... Okay, so they've got a Tipu as well. So their Tipu is actually much scarier than we might think. So I think what I want to do is actually try and just protect our Toxoid here. So I'm going to go for this attack first. We missed anyway. But this is where, again, we can use our second wind here for 2 free cinder. We can use our Into the Breach. And our plan is to play Broken Vengeance. So we're going to play Broken Vengeance over here. We're going to move him, again, just out of range of other units. Take that shot. And we could take an attack here with Toxoid. But if we do, so that puts them to 3, which means we've got lethal damage on the board next turn. But they could shield themselves. And we're putting ourselves in range of Beatrice, but I think for the sake of this, let's just push the damage through and try and get this through as quickly as we can. So because they've attacked back, we want to make them use everything they can. We are just going to use our lifeline here, and that forces them to use more cinder to kill our Toxoid than they need to, because they can't just do it with Tipu anymore. Okay, so this here looks like it's a good situation for us. They're going to hit both of our units, but we should be able to hit them for 3 next turn. These 2 together can kill this. We didn't get a crit, so we don't go through. Even if we did, they've got a shield on, so we wouldn't have actually dealt any damage. Tipu is going to kill this, but if they don't Shield of Hope here, okay, they do Shield of Hope. If they hadn't done, we just won the game. So what we'd normally do if we had a cheaper cost unit here, we could Into the Breach something. But now we're just going to use this opportunity to shoot here at 100%. Move back into this corner. Use Astra to shoot here. We could hope for a crit, which is unlikely, but there we go, and move back. And then to keep things safe, our last unit that we're playing is Florio, and you can see how big Florio's range is just at the edge of the over by our Broken Vengeance there. So we're just going to play this to cover anywhere Exterior could consider running to, and that way, next turn, there's not anything in the list apart from maybe if they played a Toner that could even heal them up past what Florio could deal. So we're going to be going into this with the intention of killing that. Okay, they've just spent all their cinder. So we've now got multiple units here that can finish this off. Any 1 damage here ends the game in our favour. So what we're going to do, because we've put Florio out, we're just going to use the Bombard ability because it can't miss. Abilities can't miss. I'm just going to push this down and take out the enemy captain. So that was a pretty straightforward game. We played our curve 1 to 5 and it ended up going quite well. And what we're going to do next is jump into a PvP game, and from that point see how well we face against a real opponent using the same logic. And you can see also how well we use Second Wind, which is something that is new since I last made one of these videos, and it's something you do have to take into account when building your lists. And this one hasn't perfectly optimized for it, but it can use it reasonably thanks to Astra having Into the Breach. So once we get back in the game, I will see you there, and we can go ahead and try out some PvP. Okay, so we've queued up into a PvP game, and now we can try our Astra list into a real PvP situation. So one of the things to bear in mind is that one thing we didn't talk about much in the previous video is positioning, and that's because we've talked about positioning in the previous videos, but versus the melee captain, what we are trying to do is just move away from the enemy and keep basically as much distance as possible, checking the enemy melee ranges and making sure that they couldn't charge us when we didn't want them to. So, we've now got another Extilior, and we've got a choice of assists. So, Stimburst is increasingly powerful at the moment. It's one of my favourite assists at the moment, and Lifeline is fairly good. Plink is great, but Recall is okay. And Stowaway is pretty bad at the moment, and Stasis Field is absolutely fine. So, Stimburst and Lifeline it is. The additional movement is so much more important than you might realise, and we'll see what kind of opponent we're going to come up against. So we know it's going to be an Extilior, but without them having any paint job to it, there's a very reasonable chance this is someone playing basically the intro Extilior list, and this is the sort of level of opponent that you should hope to be coming against as well, if that is the case. So hopefully we'll see in a couple of seconds. Okay, yeah, so we've got a level 3 opponent. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move forwards. We can't get any good lines of sight, so there's no need to take any risks. We're just going to grow our cinder back here, and honestly, we can stay exactly where we are. They can't get to us, and we're just going to end the turn. So, growing our cinder turn 1, it's going to grow to 2 cinder turn 2, and hopefully our opponent will be here, and they can start making their moves, and we can sort of figure out where to go from there. Okay, so they've got a deployment. This is likely going to be a Maximus if they're playing the beginners list. The Nuts and Bolts Extilior list. Yep, that's a reasonable position back there. It's fairly safe. This is more where I'd go, but I'd move my captain first. And against an Astra, I'm not actually afraid of an Astra whatsoever, so I'd probably just move all the way up.
Where am I?
Yeah, so this ordering is something I probably would do differently. But again, this is the sort of thing you might come against in your regular games, so don't be too worried about coming across an opponent who's not playing things in the order you think they should do. It's nothing to be surprised by. So here, there's no line of sight onto anything for us, as we can see here. So this is just by clicking our unit, holding right click, nothing there, left click to let go. Over here we can move to somewhere we probably can't be seen by Maximus, so I'd say about here. Gain our extra cinder, and we're just going to play the same 2 units we said about last time. So Rickety's the most important one, so we're going to hide him back here. With Taria still just behind. Now, with having Stimburst, if they move towards us aggressively next turn, we can move out towards them as well. So it's something we're going to be considering. And also, this is one of the very rare occasions where I don't mind using Rickety Backfire's abilities to attack without having gone for the explosion, because we've got Lifeline. So as long as we don't stay in range of Extilior, we can actually heal back up anything we need to. Okay, so they're going for a really low percent chance here. They did actually hit one at 8%, which if they hadn't done, they wouldn't be able to move back, so I was hoping that they could stay there, we could take our shots. I think they need to be moving towards us, because as an Astra, we can get bigger things quite quickly, and I think they need to really start trying to deal with that. But I think in this scenario, this is actually the right choice. So, I'm very surprised they got that hit, but it happens. It's only about a, 1 in 11? 1 in 12? I'm not quite sure on the maths, but 8% is pretty... it's not as bad as it seems.
I could hide in the corner.
Okay, so them having an Aria now, I feel like we actually need to move out quite quickly. And for that reason, we actually are going to use Stimburst now. I don't know if this is the right choice, but it's something that I feel reasonably comfortable with doing, because I think we need to try and get pressure onto the board. So we can only get a shot onto Extilior, not onto Maximus. So what I'm going to rely on here is basically trying to move Taria somewhere that she can be safe and just take a pot shot. I don't think we've got anything really here, no. So none of this matters. We move Astra forward. And we want Astra to, if we could, to protect Rickety, but again, doesn't seem like there's really an option. So we're just going to go in here for this. Missed again. And Rickety's just going to move over here, because without them having Plink, which they would have used already on Taria, or getting a crit, we're actually fairly safe here. Now there is a 40% chance to hit up there, but that's not really what we want to be doing. What we're going to do is put some pressure on them by placing a Toxoid really far forward. So all that's going to make them do is have to deal with this before they deal with Rickety in some situations, and either one of these survive is great for us. If you press tab, you cycle between any units with actions left, but we don't want to shoot this in case we blow up and hurt ourselves, so we're just going to end the turn here. So if I was our opponent, at this point I don't even know which I'd prioritise. Toxoid is obviously very dangerous because Toxoid can potentially just get into range of something, deal a damage, and that's it. That unit can't do much from there. They've got their Tipu. So we've got plenty of units that we need to kill. Them hitting that's slightly awkward for us because they can just now move away, but we do heal one at the end of our turn, so it's not the end of the world here. Especially if they go for the shots with Maximus, we'll actually just not worry about it in the slightest and just go and do something different instead. As it will just heal, you heal up. Yeah, so if they just shoot this, take us down to 1, we'll just use our lifeline unless they crit it, and probably just move somewhere safe. So here we need to try and kill Maximus basically, because they're moving everything around here. We have obviously got our Rickety to look after, but our Toxoid is probably going to die. Okay, now this makes things awkward again. It actually makes us even less inclined to attack another time over. So, checking out all their movements, we're still fairly safe if we go here. And I'll be honest, I almost feel like Toxoid can run back. What if we... So where can Aria move? Aria can move up here, so we can't really save Toxoid any easy way. So maybe we actually place him back here. We'll move up in this direction with our Astra, and also with Taria, because Taria might be able to get a random shot off as well. So, any shots here? Not really. So we've got a 0% to there. Do have a very low percent chance with Taria. 12. They hit an 8. We hit the 12. Nice. Okay, so what we're going to do here, because all of these things are quite threatening, we're going to place our Broken Vengeance down just about over here. We want to basically make it so that Tipu can't get to us, but we still are in a threatening position. So Tipu can move quite a long way. So let's just place this about here. Make it so that without something impressive, Tipu can't get to us, and we're going to start moving towards them. Toxoid is just going to heal himself up, so we might be able to find a world where with a Stim Burst we can get into range, and that's really what we're going for. But realistically, what we're looking for next turn is actually just to Stim Burst this in, and use this to kill, hopefully, the Tipu, because Tipu is a growing threat. It's quite a difficult thing to deal with. But as you can see, we've taken this game really slowly. We've got both of our assists off of cooldown. We've got all of our units at pretty much full health. We've taken 1 damage down here, and Toxoid's going to heal itself, but we've done nothing to them. However, given the positioning, I actually feel quite confident. Okay, this is a mistake, because Broken Vengeance shoots back every time Maximus damages us. So that's put us in a position where they're actually just going to die to Maximus. So Maximus is going to die to Broken Vengeance every single time. It's a very common new player mistake. I've done it myself, but that's how Broken Vengeance's ability works. Immediately attack any crew that damages Broken Vengeance, and that does include those who've gone through the double attack. Okay, so here's the damage coming onto our Rickety here. It's something we expected. Now, what I want them to do is move forwards with Tipu somewhere. It's the only real obvious option that they have got here, and it means that if... Oh, I say not obvious, but it seems like an obvious option to them, and we're going to want to try and get in range of it. Okay, so the question here is Stim Burst enough to get our Rickety over here? Or even just over here might do the job, but ideally we'd like to get as far as possible. We'll Stim Burst everybody.
Gotta try this.
Okay, so we can't actually get quite where we wanted to there, so this is where we're going to have to go on this front, to just make sure we try and get as much damage onto Tipu as possible. And we're willing to sacrifice our unit here. We'd actually probably rather it die than live, because we don't want to give Tipu an opportunity to grow. Okay, it didn't explode, which is unfortunate. So Broken Vengeance can pop in here, take a shot. Toxoid, we're just going to try and keep safe and gradually move towards them. Now we need to figure out what our best options are from here. So we haven't got a good shot from here onto Tipu at all, but we can just block some of this out with Astra. So we've got 100% there, but nothing on there, so we'll just take that as a hit. Do the same with our So with our Taria, just take another shot there. And if you look, we're tabbing through, nothing useful to do here. So we're actually just going to play Florio and Answer back over here. And now the question is, do we want to actually heal this to force them to spend more damage on it? And I actually think the answer is yes. I'd rather it have died, but if not, I'm going to heal it. It doesn't sound to make most sense, but this way they have to dedicate 2 sets of resources to dealing with it, rather than just 1. Our Toxoid's healing up, we're going to gradually move him towards some of the more dangerous units. Yeah, so this way they can take us down. Their Tipu grows, but without something like medical recall or their own lifeline. They could have lifeline here, by the way. This is not an unreasonable lifeline opportunity for them. It would heal them back up to full. But from here on out, we're probably looking at using Florio almost every turn. So we're probably not going to use much of these other units really, unless we see a really good opportunity for something. Okay, so this is... Are they just trying to block us in? This could be a jailbreak, for instance, or... It looks like they're just trying to keep Tipu safe. If I were them, I'd absolutely be using Astra to come around here, take this... not Astra, Aria, to take this shot. Okay, they've gone for Nano Shield, interesting. So now we've got like a lot of choices to make. So I actually think because of the way they've placed this, we can move Rickety into the middle here after we've used our Florio and try and just damage everything in a big AoE. And okay, yeah, so this is the right choice then to kill this. Aria should just move around here and shoot it, but that was a mistake, because if it hits Broken Vengeance it shoots back anyway and it doesn't kill it. So shoot what you can kill is absolutely a valid assessment. Okay, so Crankbait's not something we're as worried about. What we are worried about is their captain and Furia and Tipu. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by bombarding. We can get all 4 of these, I believe, but we don't need to worry about Tipu because it doesn't do anything right now. So let's just chip away at all of these. Now here, we can either rely on the explosion, or we can go all out on the enemy captain. I think, because Furia's quite scary but not, game breaking, I think we just go for the captain damage again. There's a good chance this kills Furia anyway, 70%, because then we can just move Broken Vengeance in and take it out. So I think we go for this. Exploding would be great. There we go, perfect. So that puts a shield onto her, which means that we can just bring Broken Vengeance in. The other question is, we've got 2 cinder left, so I actually think our correct play here is probably just to seize initiative onto Broken Vengeance, shoot twice here, shoot here, and maybe even just try and block their exterior in a little bit. Get our Toxoid to come in this direction so we can potentially fly over next turn. Astra to pop for 1 in. Oh, I didn't realise we're actually in melee range, that was a mistake, but I forgot that we were there from last turn. So here, it's going to be very hard for them to live. Their only real option is to try and kill us. I don't know if they can do so. We should have just moved Astra back here, it would have made it nearly impossible. So I think I have actually made a mistake on this front, because we can take 5. They can't get in range with this, which is the important thing, unless Crankbait's got something to say about it. But that may be doable. Yeah, because they can move down here, so we actually placed incorrectly here. Okay, that was a mistake on their part. They've lost another unit, and it hasn't taken out this quite yet. Oh, that miss is really big for us. If they'd used that cinder and killed that, there's actually a world in which they could do this, I believe. Oh no, maybe not. They've only got 9 damage on the board at the moment. This is fine, they can move over here. But we've got Florio, who's almost impossible to stop in terms of dealing damage, because ability damage can't miss. So without them healing, or killing Florio, there's nothing they can do to stop this. So they need to gain 1 more health than they currently have access to, because they could shield themselves. So an Ursic's Neck Divine technically keeps them alive, but then they'd have to avoid damage from all other sources as well. So, yep, this here still puts them as dead to our Florio, and given that we've got Stim Burst, we can move other things up as well. We're in a pretty good spot here. Okay, so no sense in wasting time, we'll just hit the bombard, take it out, and that's our first, a PvP game played out quite well with our Astra into another beginner player. So all in all, Astra's a much more complicated captain than the other 2. It involves a lot of decision making. There's times when you want to use Into the Breach to haste, there's times when you want to not, you want to grow cinder orbs, you need to make sure they're safe. Don't be surprised if you start playing Astra and you struggle a lot to begin with, because Astra's a very difficult captain to play. This is a really good starting point. It probably wants a little bit of tweaking and things like adding in, say, something like a blindside or Esley. So Esley does really well with Astra, because you can Into the Breach, play Esley, and then for 5 cinder you've got 4 damage hasty attacker. So that's maybe another option over Toxoid, or save Toxoid to use because Esley's fine on turn 3 as itself, whereas Toxoid is better from Into the Breach, get that surprise factor in. There's a lot of different nuance to the Astra lists. Really, really, really powerful captain. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to help out. I just love this game and I really want you to enjoy it as much as I do. So this is my beginner's guide to Astra. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and most importantly, have a good day.